Odell Beckham finally picks a team. We discuss his current dynasty value next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Magdziuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on the journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Magdziuk. Check her out on Twitter at Kate Magdziuk. Kate, let's dive right into it. Odell Beckham signs with the Baltimore Ravens on a one-year deal worth up to $18 million. Your gut reaction is
shock. Absolute shock. That was the last alert I think I expected to have pop up on my phone on a Saturday evening as I'm enjoying my Easter dinner. Sunday evening as I'm enjoying my Easter dinner. First gut reaction is shocked at the contract value. It's a big contract, Marcus.
Big contract.
Before the show, you were mentioning he's the 10th paid highest wide receiver right now in the NFL. Just like pure shock, because that tells us that the Ravens are expecting to utilize him and to have him be a big part of the offense. Like, you don't pay a wide receiver that kind of money, especially a team that historically just hasn't paid a lot of money into their receiver group.
Sure.
Like, that's a big contract, especially for them. I feel like 15 mil guaranteed for the Ravens is equivalent to like $35 million on any other team.
This isn't like, hey, we're just taking a flyer on him. This is, hey, we're paying you to be a number one receiver for us this year.
Yeah, that's the intent when you look at that contract. And I gotta say, based on, the recent history of Odell Beckham, 2 torn ACLs, has generally struggled since his time with the New York Giants. Pretty shocked that he garnered that. But what does this mean for the rest of the Ravens receiving core?
We'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into that. It's just it was a huge surprise.
I agree. I was fully expecting him to sign with the Jets, and it seemed like Odell kind of wanted to go there. He called the Jets, I believe it was on Saturday night, and said, hey, this is the offer that I got from the Ravens. Can you guys match it? The Jets said no, so he decided to pick Baltimore. It's not my favorite fit in the world, but it's also not my least favorite fit, because I do think he's going to walk in and be the number one receiver there. And I'm a Rashod Bateman fan, but you don't give this guy potentially $18 million to be a number 2 receiver. Like, he's going to be the featured wide receiver in this offense. I still think Mark Andrews is going to be the number 1 target guy, but the featured receiver in this offense. And I think it's probably one of the few destinations where he can be the number 1 guy, because if he goes to the Jets, I think at best case scenario, he's your number 2 receiver. And even then, they paid Allen Lazard a bunch of money. And obviously Odell's a better receiver than Allen Lazard, but this is one of the few spots where I could see him getting the most targets.
Yeah, I think the opportunities should be plentiful. And again, maybe, I don't know, what does this mean for Lamar Jackson, etc.?
We'll get to that too.
And we'll get to that too. It's just the fallout of this move is so significant, Marcus, across every position.
I do want to make one point before we kind of start talking about all the other little pieces around this, but I think it's important to remember that this Baltimore offense is going to look a lot different this year, right? And I think it's so easy to say, oh, well, that Ravens offense, they just run. They don't throw it to the receivers. Remember, they changed offensive coordinators. They went from Greg Roman, one of the most run-heavy offensive coordinators in the league, to Todd Monken, who loves to throw the ball and loves to throw the ball down the field. So you could be getting a value in your leagues right now just because people think, oh, that Baltimore offense just doesn't throw to the receivers that much. I this offense is going to look a lot different, and because Odell is there now, I expect them to throw the ball more to the outside.
Yeah, I mean that I think is probably one of the more interesting points of this conversation because like we really don't know exactly what we're going to be walking into, right? Like in uh Todd Monken's years as an offensive coordinator in Tampa specifically, like saw a lot of production in terms of the passing yardage, top 10 in passing yards in both the 2017 and 2018 season, but more notably, perhaps, ranked 22nd or worse in each of his last 3 seasons as an offensive coordinator. It's a really interesting fit because you just wonder, like, are the
Well,
Ravens really open to changing the ship around, and does that signal that they're ready for a change at quarterback as well?
the good news about Todd Monken is Odell has experience with him. He was the
Yep.
offensive coordinator in Cleveland in 2019, which just so happened to be the last time that Odell Beckham went over 1,000 yards. He was in 15 starts that year, 1,000 yards, 4 touchdowns, average over 14 yards per catch. No, that's not lighting the world on fire, but it's not like Odell is going to be going to an entirely new offense. Like he's going to know exactly what to expect. Todd Monken knows how to use him, and that makes me feel a lot better about the signing and why the Ravens decided to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting, of course, like the inefficiencies that Odell Beckham has had since moving on from the New York Giants. Like each of the last 3 seasons hasn't exceeded 56% catch rate. But so like on that note, though, in 2019, accomplished that 1,000 yard season,
Yep.
4 touchdown season with a 55.6% catch rate. And he did have the yards per reception. So like if there is the right pairing at quarterback, like Baker Mayfield, I don't think he and Odell Beckham Jr. were the best fit, just
To say the
from
least.
based on chemistry, weren't the best 1-2 punch there. So, maybe,
Yeah. I'm not writing it
maybe.
off. I'm not writing it off at all. Let's talk about Odell Beckham's current dynasty value and where we think he's going to end up among receivers next. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially because we're always growing and changing and evolving. Therapy is all about deepening your self awareness and understanding because sometimes we don't know what we want or why we react the way we do or why we say the things that we say until we talk through some things. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self discovery from wherever you are. So, if you're thinking about giving therapy a try, please check out BetterHelp. It's entirely online, it's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule no matter how busy you are. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. All of the therapists are licensed, they're vetted, they're absolutely fantastic. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked on. All right, Kate, let's talk about Odell Beckham's current dynasty value. He is being drafted as wide receiver 76. Now, that was in the month of March. We know that's going to rise. How high up are you willing to push him now that we know he's in Baltimore?
I think for a win now team, you can make the argument that his ranking should be a little bit higher than that. I mean, a lot of the names around him, right? Totally speculative names. Devin Duvernay, KJ Hamler. Like we're not
I mean,
talking
Duvernay's on the
about,
same team, right? And he's clearly going to be behind Odell Beckham on the depth chart.
yeah, like that in and of itself, like Curtis Samuel, like these are the names that Isaiah Hodgins, even Khalil Shakir, like these are the names that are, being similarly valued to Odell
Mm,
Beckham Jr. And I think we all know all of these guys are speculative. There's not a single one of these that I'm looking at and saying, oh, what a lock for a wide receiver too. We know that the upside of Odell Beckham Jr. is significantly higher. Now, again, so many concerns. He's 30 years old. He's had 2 torn ACLs,
mm.
but like the opportunity is there. And I do think that like that's got to be counted for something. But you can only make that investment if you're looking to win now and win now this year.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have him ranked, I think, in the low 50s. Here's some other names that are being drafted around that same spot. Jacoby Myers. He just signed a 3-year deal with the Raiders. Again, pretty clearly the number 2 option at best. With Devontae Adams, they also have Hunter Renfro. I'm not sure that Myers is ever going to be a 1,000-yard receiver with the Raiders. Juju Smith-Schuster. We just saw him in the best possible situation in Kansas City. Didn't get over 1,000 yards there. Now he goes to New England. Wan'Dale Robinson, wide receiver 52. Brandon Cooks just got traded from the Texans to the Cowboys. I think that's, to me, the range where I want to take a shot on Odell.
And I think that seems really fair, right? Like the question of upside for all of these players is still there.
Yeah.
Question for Odell Beckham Jr.'s upside still there, but like at least you've seen it, right? Like we've seen the 1,000-yard season, we've seen 1,300 yards,
Yeah.
13 touchdown season. Like it's there, and like OBJ, he's a competitor, and
Yep.
again, I just keep going back to the money, Marcus. Like money
Yes.
talks. And
Absolutely. Yes.
that felt like such a significant call that like they're handing the keys to Odell Beckham in this passing offense. And I mean, if he's fully healthy, which like he had the whole last season of football to rehab and to be ready. I don't know. I'm in. I'm in for my win now teams. Now, if you have Odell Beckham Jr. on a roster where you are in need of rebuild, this is your time to sell. You
Yes.
need to get him off your roster as soon as possible. Because you're not that the price for Odell Beckham Jr. will never be higher again in his career.
Well,
Mm,
I might disagree with you. I think I might wait, right? Because this goes into the next topic. What if this is the move that brings Lamar Jackson back? It seems like that's a very good possibility. The Ravens probably don't make this move unless they know Lamar's coming back or they've had discussions. And frankly, I don't think Odell signs there unless he kind of has the feeling that Lamar's coming back, right? And I think as we get closer to the season, and if we get some Lamar Jackson news, I actually think his value is going to get higher. And then on top of that, Kate, once people kind of realize, hey, this isn't Greg Roman's offense, like this team is actually going to throw the ball 30 times a game, I do wonder if we'll see a slight rise in his dynasty value.
The question though is what happens to it. Like again, this is why I think it's the soft spot of a time to make a move, because say conversely, we do get, an alert that Lamar Jackson has received an offer the Ravens aren't going to match. I do think that does a significant number
Oh,
on
of
Odell's.
course. Yes.
So like if you're maybe you can, if Lamar is indeed coming back, there will be probably another bump in value. But I think right now the presumption is, generally speaking, that this might be a move that could entice
Lamar to
Lamar
come back.
to
Yep.
come back, to either play on the tag, to
Sure.
do something this season, right? Like
Yeah.
I feel like that assumption is already kind of baked into his value. So maybe we'd get like a little artificial bump immediately after that reaction. But generally speaking, I think that value is already there, and we know how low that value can go if Lamar Jackson is officially not
Coming
going
back.
to be
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
I do want to ask you, let's assume that Lamar Jackson just comes back on the tag, right? And he's fully intent on playing out his deal. This probably doesn't change where you're ranking Lamar in your startup drafts or in your super flex leagues, because I don't think a 1-year signing of Odell probably does a lot. But do you think it impacts how Lamar Jackson produces in 2023?
No,
No.
right? Like,
Well, I
I,
I don't know. I kind of think it does, right? Because last year when Lamar was healthy, they really didn't have a viable receiver other than Mark Andrews, right? Rashod Bateman was pretty good to start the year, and then he got hurt, and then we didn't see him again. And then it was just a full cast of characters that was out playing receiver. I
cast of
feel
characters.
I feel like with Odell and having Bateman come back, and the still possibility that they could draft a receiver in round 1, I do feel like they have at least, and I should also mention Nelson Aguilar. As much as we hate on Nelson Aguilar, I do think he's a viable NFL receiver. I feel like Lamar finally has a decent group of skill players around him. And I think that could get him back to being a top 2 or 3 weekly producer at the quarterback position.
Here's the thing, though, like I think this was a good move for Odell. I think this was a good, like a relatively solid situation for him to step into for his value personally. But I mean, Odell Beckham Jr. Sure, he gets a nice a nice quarterback, right? If we're presuming Lamar Jackson's throwing him the ball, but this is a guy that's had 300 receiving yard games since 2018.
I know. I know.
Three.
And,
3.
to me, Kate, it's just that he gets another NFL receiver, right? And I think at times last year
Yeah.
they were putting out guys like, I mean, Demarcus Robinson was their leading receiver down the stretch last year. Like they have 4 guys now
Yeah.
on their team that are better than Demarcus Robinson. I think that helps to have viable players to throw to now.
It helps.
Yeah.
It helps. Yeah.
I do want to ask you about how this impacts another receiver on the Baltimore Ravens when we get back. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Grand slams, no hitters, and double plays are back, and there is no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, new customers get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to locked on to sign up to place your first bet and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. So don't miss a chance to get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/locked on to sign up. Check out some of those basketball futures. We've got some playoffs starting here. On Tuesday, we've got NFL draft futures that you can bet on. Obviously, we got baseball. We just had the Masters. So much going on in the sports world right now. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. Again, go to FanDuel.com/locked on to sign up. All right, Kate, let's talk about Rashod Bateman. We're going into year 3 now. We've seen a pretty steady decline in his dynasty value. At this point last year, and he was being ranked inside the top 20 receivers, he's down to wide receiver 36. How does the Odell Beckham signing impact his dynasty value?
I definitely think it decreases his value. Just in turn, like again, not because Odell being on the field would be bad for Rashod Bateman. I think this would be actually probably a breath of fresh air for him to have
Yes.
another NFL caliber wide receiver playing opposite him. Now, the thing that, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but again, that keeps me going back to the fact that like this might not be great for his value is the money.
Yeah,
You
that's
don't
exactly what it is,
pay
right?
Odell Beckham Jr. that kind of money if you're projecting Rashod Bateman to be your number 1 wide
100%.
receiver in this season. Looking at what he's done, I mean, he's had more games with fewer than 30 receiving yards than he does with more than 60
Exactly.
in games where he's been active. Like, love the prospect. I love what I think he could be. But, again, having those missed games this past season with the foot injury didn't help. The you want more from his trajectory. Maybe this will force a buy low opportunity at some point for Rashod Bateman. Because again, believe in the talent. And if Todd Monken's system does complement, this receiving game as well as we would hope it would, there's probably room for both. It's just the concern that what the Ravens signaled based on that payday
Yes.
for Odell is that they're projecting him to lead this team in receiving yards,
Mhm.
targets, etc.
Right, exactly. You nailed it. And I think the other thing is we've got to remember is, can this offense support a running quarterback, a tight end, top 5 tight end, a wide receiver, quote unquote, one, no doubt Beckham, and another receiver in Rashod Bateman.
You just did Odell so dirty with those little air
I
quotes,
know.
like
Well, I'm saying
casually.
he's going to be, listen, he's going to be their number one receiver. Like, I don't see a way that he's not, in a per game basis, the most targeted wide receiver on the roster, right? So can Rashod Bateman have a lot of dynasty value in an offense he's clearly going to be the third target? I don't know. But I think the thing is, for Bateman, it's now or never, right? Like, we're going into year 3. He's 23 years old. Lamar Jackson, we expect him to come back. If it doesn't happen this year, it's not happening.
Yeah, just to be clear, Marcus, like for the 18 games that we have seen Rashod Bateman active in his career so far, not a single game as a top 12 wide receiver
Yeah.
ever.
Now, again, there's going to be more passing volume. The pie is going to be bigger here, but there's also more target competition. So it's a trade-off. If he stays healthy, I won't be surprised if he kind of nickels and dimes his way to 1,000 yards or 900 yards. But I don't think, as it stands right now, I don't know how you can trust him in your fantasy lineups week in and week out.
No, this is a red flag.
Yes.
But Marcus, looking at the history of wide receivers, we know that the third year leap is something that we've seen come to fruition time and time again. So the potential is no doubt there for Rashod Bateman,
Yep.
but to look at what he's produced so far, even though he has not always been healthy, to look at what he's produced so far in his career, it's not like we're getting any glowing indications that a monstrous third year season is coming. And the Ravens move here tells us they see that same thing.
Don't forget about Isaiah Likely in this passing game. I know he's blocked by Mark Andrews, but he might just be too good of a player to not get on the field, which adds even more target competition for Rashod Bateman. So that's our thoughts on the Odell Beckham signing. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. Now make your second listen, the Locked On NFL Scouting Show with the Draft Dudes. From free agency to the draft, salary cap management, and more. Join NFL experts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino as they take you through what it's like to build a successful NFL franchise every Monday through Friday. Find Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for listening to our show. Please go check us out on YouTube. We post shows there every single day. You can follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Magdziuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. We'll see you guys next time.